la idea es un poco repasar el proceso de los aplanados de cal. Utilizamos un poco del material que había aquí atrás, es una arena, perdón, era una grava de río, porque no teníamos una arena, pero de ahí sacamos la arena después de arnear con dos mallas de distinto tamaño.
And what Javier and I are going to do is we're going to go back and forth and kind of change things up, because we do things different, we do things the same, so we're feeding off of that as we kind of go through this process we're going to be explaining.
Bueno, y la idea es ir un poco sobre la marcha. Hay algunas cosas que hacemos iguales, diferentes, pero bueno, la idea es ir aprendiendo un poco todos, ¿no?
So we had more or less a 1/4-inch screen that we ran all the material through for our rough sand. And then we had a finer screen, a window screen, that we had with our finished sand. So here's our rough sand.
Bueno, básicamente pasamos por dos tamaños de arnero y pueden ver a esta más gruesa y esta que tengo yo un poco más fina, ¿no?
And with the first coat, what we usually do is we try to find a sand that's going to give us a good particle size distribution of small, medium, and big. And this sand is actually a good particle size distribution. It looks like it has a lot of big stuff, but it also has a lot of small stuff, which usually is missing with sands that we work with.
Y en realidad lo que uno busca es una granulometría bastante equilibrada, que tenga tamaños grandes, medianos y pequeños. De hecho, esta arena, a pesar de que salió de la grava, tiene una buena mezcla de partículas, ¿no?
And they just slaked some lime in the pit earlier, and if you can see the lime, this is lime that's been sitting for a couple days, so it's not hot, so it's not going to be dangerous for us to handle, but it is caustic to your eyes and to your nose and your lungs.
Bueno, usamos un poco de la cal que ya habían apagado hace un par de días, entonces está fresca, no tiene mayor problema. Desde luego, como siempre, cuidado con los ojos, ojo con los ojos y un poco con respirarlo, ¿no?
And when you're working with this, whether you're slaking or whether you're working with the cal apagada, you want to make sure that you take the safety precautions of long sleeve shirts and hats and long pants and gloves.
Y bueno, de todos modos conviene que cuando se esté trabajando con los morteros o inclusive en el proceso de apagado, siempre usen ciertas cosas de seguridad, como pueden ser camisas de manga larga, como no traigo, pantalones largos, etcétera, ¿no?
And what we do in the field is when we slake the lime, sometimes if we have a screen, we'll run the material through the screen, and you can see the different impurities that are in there. This is overburned and underburned materials. Actually, let me correct myself. This is very high quality lime. So this isn't underburned or overburned. This material is probably some of the other impurities that come through that need to be screened out.
Y bueno, como siempre, la cal es una cal en general de bastante buena calidad, pero si se fijan tiene partículas un poco, algunas impurezas que, como ya habíamos señalado, vale la pena colarla, ¿no? Para tener una pasta más pura, pues, ¿no?
It's not entirely important to take these out, because historically these impurities exist in the lime. So, you know, don't get hung up on having to go through the whole process, because actually these small pieces will help make up that aggregate sand piece that's important in the mix.
Y bueno, comenta Pat que de todos modos no se preocupen a veces demasiado porque quede totalmente pura. Históricamente, de hecho, la palomilla de cal ha estado siempre allí y a veces le ayuda inclusive a esta idea de la granulometría, ¿no?
And the material, the recipe that we started working with was a 4 rough sand to 1 lime, and as we mixed that up, we found that we needed to put another lime in there to make it a 3 to 1, and that's pretty much this material here that we've already mixed up.
Y bueno, empezamos trabajando al principio con una mezcla de la arena gruesa 4 partes con una de cal, pero conforme la fuimos revolviendo le estaba haciendo falta consistencia y le agregamos otro volumen de cal, un poco más de cal para hacerle una 3 a 1.
And then our finished material, our capa fina, is 2 of the screen sand to 1 of our lime.
Y bueno, ya para la mezcla para el acabado fino son 2 de arena, la arena horneada y una de cal.
And as we're mixing this up, the material will change color, and it'll change its properties, so it'll become very plastic. So it has to be mixed up very, 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 very thoroughly.
Y bueno, conforme uno va revolviendo el material, va cambiando su color, su textura, se vuelve más plástica y es importante que hagamos una buena revoltura, ¿no?
And as we go through and we approach a project, we do a conditions assessment to be able to understand what the problems are. Antonio Guerrero just did that earlier with us. We'll go through a thorough conditions assessment. And in addition to our process, we conduct little investigations to understand the materials, where they're at, where they're located, and the recipes that we're going to be using. So we'll make our little investigations on a wall, and in this particular case we chose this wall that's not historic, so we don't change any of the documentation we might need to do for future.
Y bueno, también se trata de ir haciendo algunas pequeñas pruebas, conocer un poco el material, de dónde lo podemos obtener, por supuesto saber un poco las mezclas, y siempre es bueno hacer pruebas. En este caso se decidió hacer la prueba sobre un muro nuevo, ¿no? Para no, como estamos haciendo pruebas muy rápidas en el taller, no molestar los aplanados y las partes originales, ¿no?
And our original intention was to tape off and do these little sections, and you can see that we've kind of plastered over all those taped off sections. But we have a first coat on there, and what we're going to do is we're going to put this finish coat on top of that first coat so people can see the finish that's used with the plana de madera.
Y bueno, originalmente queríamos hacer unas muestras muy bien acomodaditas y todo. Finalmente terminamos por aplanar con todo y la cinta, pero no importa demasiado. La idea es un poco hacer la prueba ya con la capa fina para que vean cómo se trabaja ya con la plana de madera.
And as we explained when we did the first part of the workshop in Tumacacori, the application using the cucharas and the different anchoring systems that you want to be able to incorporate with your investigations. You want to be able to create the same situation with your investigations, including quality control, as you're going to use for the whole project. So that as you encounter a problem in the field when you're working, you can chase it back to its origin to figure out what that problem is.
Y bueno, un poco también la idea de hacer estas pequeñas investigaciones y pruebas, sobre todo de los materiales, es para saber un poco cómo se van a comportar un poco los materiales ya para un proyecto más grande, ¿no? Entonces es importante para después poder dar un seguimiento a ver dónde pudo haber habido una falla o algo así, ¿no?
And we can either use small areas like that or larger areas, and it's important to document all your information so you have that for reference. With our finish coat, we're going to go ahead and put our finish coat on. Our first coat was about a ½ inch thick, which is how many centimeters?
Casi un centímetro.
And that's roughly that thickness. The more thicker you get, you need to be able to build it up in second coats. And our second finish coat, our capa fina, is going to be about 1/4 to 3/8 thick, and we'll use the plana to finish it.
Y bueno, un poco el tamaño de las muestras pueden ser como esta, un poco más grande, en fin, eso depende de cada uno. Desde luego la primera aplanado es más o menos 1 centímetro de espesor, y ya el acabado final pues lo vamos a hacer más o menos entre 2 y 4 milímetros aproximadamente.
And the thing that we talked about with the earlier group is you want to understand that in kind of showing you how we do these investigations, this is a workshop setting, so we're going to push the envelope and we're going to squeeze a whole bunch of information and time into a very small slot. So these aren't going to be exactly how you do things. You want to be able to find an area on a wall that you're going to replicate that same condition. You want to be able to make your investigations big enough to look at. You're going to want to be able to allow enough time for each coat to dry. You want to be able to duplicate everything exactly how you're going to do it in the field so you can have a good product.
Y bueno, por supuesto que aquí por las condiciones del taller de tiempo y de espacio, estamos tratando de meter mucha información en el corto tiempo que hay, ¿no? Pero entonces cuando ustedes hagan las pruebas ya, digamos, en un edificio para un proyecto específico, conviene que traten de replicar las condiciones que van a tener, es decir, el tipo de muro, no sé, la orientación, el tipo de material, para que entonces puedan controlar la calidad del proceso.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to let you all put on the final coat, and we're going to get it about that thickness that we described, about 1/4 to 3/8. We're going to get it flat, and then we're going to see how the moisture will leave it and when the timing is right to be able to use the plana de madera.
Entonces, bueno, la idea es que ahora ustedes coloquen el material en el muro La idea será colocarlo, habrá que dejarlo orear un poco y después ya para que se vea cómo se da el acabado ya con la plana.
So, grab a trowel and let's throw some plaster on the wall. Yes, sir, you bet.
So, this is all just the lime and the sand. So there's no cement anywhere in all this so far that we've been seeing.
That's exactly right. And the question in Spanish.
Sí, se preguntaba él si solo era la cal y la arena. Y bueno, efectivamente no hemos usado nada de cemento en esto, ¿no?
And you know, the reason that we're doing this is we want the walls to be able to breathe. The lime has that property. The cement hinders that natural evaporation. So the lime gives us the plasticity in the mix to be able to use it as a plaster, and it works very, very well.
Y sí, bueno, como ya se ha señalado, la cal en realidad permite justamente esta respiración de los aplanados, esta posibilidad de que el vapor de agua pase, y bueno, además de que tiene características plásticas muy, muy adecuadas para el trabajo, ¿no?
¿Y qué falta?
Que apliquen.
You bet. So I don't even think we need to put water on here because we're gonna want that to dry pretty well. And this is on a cement plaster, so these conditions are very, very different than what we do in the field. This is just for show and tell as we're going through the different steps of the workshop.
Y bueno, desde luego ya parece que ya está más o menos oreado, a lo mejor ni siquiera necesitamos ponerle agua. Por supuesto, este aplanado es de cemento y insiste un poco en la idea de que estas no son las condiciones ideales, pero por cuestiones del taller, bueno, lo estamos haciendo en este muro nuevo.
So we're throwing this on same as a thermocouple?
Yes, sir, just like that.
As a finish coat, do we need to try to control the thickness as we apply it more carefully?
We're gonna want to end up with about 1/4 to 3/8.
Entonces, bueno, la idea es controlar un poco más el grueso de lo que se... Si alguien quiere...
You bet. Yeah, well, actually, sure. You go ahead and try to put it on. Go ahead and put it on the first grid, and then we'll go from there.
Brooks has the big
Yeah, we're gonna. Since this is a little higher, we're gonna be getting it on just a little bit higher as far as across.
Now, what am I doing wrong with it? Is it the amount? Is it my swinging?
It's probably that last contact. And as you put it on, we're going to be flipping it, and your trowel will be going sideways.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a flick at the very end.
But you don't smooth it.
Not yet. And when you smooth it, you're going to be able to cut it sideways, and then fill in the lower areas.
And it does spatter when you do that.
Yes,
you
you
get
bet.
it in time.
You bet.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't put lime on without splattering.
Sí, en realidad la mecánica de echar el aplanado implica siempre una cierta fuerza y además siempre implica que vamos a tener que vamos a ensuciar un poco, ¿no?
And that action is a slapping action, and you want that adhesion from that impact. When you're plastering, generally from the ground to your elbow, you're throwing underhand, and from the elbow to your head, I throw overhand. And it's just a matter of body mechanics.
Y bueno, un poco recordar la cuestión de acomodar el cuerpo para el uso justamente de la cuchara es por debajo del brazo para la parte baja y por arriba para aplanados más altos.
The other thing too is oftentimes people will apply this second coat, this capa fina, with a llana, which is a plaster trowel, and the plaster trowel can really apply it relatively thin. So it's a matter of which mason is using it and how he's comfortable with the materials or the tools.
También muchas veces para aplicar ya la fina, los maestros usan a veces una llana y ahí pueden controlar un poco más el grosor del acabado final, ¿no? Pero bueno, tiene que ver con la habilidad, ¿no?
Ahí está.
Bien.
Dijeron que tenía que ensuciarse.
¿Cómo así? Oftentimes too, when you're putting on the first coat, they'll use a regla, a piece of wood about 3 or 4 feet tall, and they'll use it to slide across the top to be able to create that plaster plane.
Y bueno, también recordar que el proceso, sobre todo para la primera capa de aplanado, la gruesa, normalmente se usa una regla para emparejar el aplanado.
And you want to keep it really irregular, or do you come back and score?
This is the final coat, so we're gonna get it on the wall relatively thin. We're gonna take off the high spots.
No, estaba aplicando la más gruesa.
You're putting on a little too thick, so we'll just cut off the tops.
La mezcla gruesa.
Oh, he's using the mezcla.
The coarser.
Yeah, we'll use this one.
We ran out.
But that shouldn't, we can use that too.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and,
arena más gruesa, un acabado más grueso.
go ahead and mix it up. As this, we're going to get this about a 1/4 inch thick, and since we don't have a regla, we're just going to use this to do it, and it's still too wet to use the plana, but I'm just going to use it to
Ahorita lo voy a usar como regla para quitar el exceso. Todavía está, el mortero está todavía muy aguado para poder allanar, usar la plana.
If you put on this final coat too thick, it'll do just that. It'll peel off, or when it dries, it'll fracture, cracking, because the grains of the sand are too small for that thickness.
Sí, y bueno, cuando se pasa uno de grueso con el acabado final, justamente lo que pasa es que se va a tratar de desprender, sobre todo porque entre más grueso con partículas de arena más delgada, no aguanta el peso de un aplanado de ese grosor.
And you'll just be able to see how this works. You can see if it's too wet, you'll just end up digging a hole, so the moisture has to be just right in doing it.
Y bueno, ese es básicamente el movimiento para ir aplanando el acabado. Sin embargo, cuando está muy mojado, a veces hay que dejar todavía que ore más, porque si no pasa justamente eso, que se hacen ciertos hoyos, ciertas irregularidades que no es fácil controlar con el mortero tan aguado.
And your masons in the field, they'll know that timing of when the material has just the right moisture. So what they'll do is they'll take a whole wall, they'll plaster the whole thing, they'll know the moisture content of that bottom area, and they'll start coming in and working it.
Y bueno, por supuesto los maestros ya con la experiencia que tienen saben más o menos el punto de humedad que tiene que tener el aplanado para empezar a darle justamente el acabado con la plana. Por supuesto lo que hacen es que utilizan un tramo mucho más amplio para que entonces tener tramo, bueno, tener más trabajo y luego regresan, ¿no?
So if someone wants, it might be a little premature to put this on there, but for the sake of the workshop, if someone would like to use this plana de madera to do it, you can just start figuring out the consistencies. This is a wood float.
Is there any other, what are the other float? Is there anything but the wood float?
Well, this is a mesquite plana de madera, and it's a very, very, very hard wood. And this plana was this thick about 8 years ago, and this is one of my favorite. This is the only trowel that I use because the steel llanas, the plaster trowels, will pull the lime out of the plaster and leave it lime rich on the outside and lime poor on the inside.
Bueno, preguntaba Jim en relación a que si se puede usar además de la llana, la plana de madera, alguna otra cosa. Bueno, un poco repetía esta preocupación de al usar la llana, lo que hace es que jalas la cal hacia la superficie. Y bueno, aunque ahorita está un poco todavía húmedo, de todos, si quieren empezar por cuestiones de tiempo a sentir un poco lo de la plana.
You betcha. The other thing too, to follow Jim's question, because it's a really good question, is it depends upon your texture. And this plana will give you a very typical traditional texture that you see everywhere. If you want to use something where the sand is raised of the texture, you need to be able to use like a sponge float. Right. But this one actually creates, using the plana de madera on a whole wall will create that flat surface just because of the repetitious circular motions, and it will cut the plaster, and then you'll have a buildup, like for example with Bob's doing, as he's going around, he's going to have a buildup of plaster on here. And then that mason, that albañil, will take that and he'll fill in a hole and he'll just continue on his way.
Bueno, y entonces un poco la ventaja de la plana es que da una textura que es, bueno, que se utiliza mucho en México, este movimiento además circular que da la plana, que además dependiendo justamente del grano que tiene el mortero, el grano de arena puede dar diferentes texturas. Y claro, al ir haciendo estos movimientos circulares, también se va pegando un poco el mortero a la plana. El albañil normalmente la raspa con la cuchara y lo vuelve a aplicar para ir llenando las oquedades y los hoyos que van quedando.
I worked with this really talented mason one time, and he was working in a very tight corner, and he couldn't find the plana was too big. So he went and he cut a piece of the cushion off of the pews from inside the church, and he used that little black piece, and it worked really well.
So now, are you able to buy a wooden, or do you have to have that made?
You buy these in Mexico. That's the only place you can buy them. You can buy redwood floats in the United States, but they won't last a day. They won't last a day.
No. Ya se
You want to go ahead and do that? No. Como circular. Ahí está. Nice and light. There you go.
Otro detalle es importante también no sobre trabajar el aplanado, porque le roba al interior de la capa de su cal, ¿verdad? It's important not to overwork the lime like I was doing, because the more you work it, the more you draw the cream up to the surface, and then you end up where the inner part of the plaster has less lime than it would like to have, and the outer surface has more lime than it needs. The skilled masons know, again, the balance and the feel of it.
No, también a veces cuando se seca, cuando pierde humedad, pasa lo contrario. A veces le dan una mojadita a la llana para que corra mejor, ¿no? I was saying that sometimes the masons, the skilled masons, it might happen on the contrary that the mortar will be a bit too dry, and sometimes they'll wet a little bit the plana, so it'll have a better, it'll slide better on the surface.
In addition to, if they're working a whole wall and it's drying too fast, they'll take a brush and they'll wet it, or a little manguera, or a little, just to get moisture on the wall to be able to buy that time.
Y sí, también hay veces que lo que hacen es que aplican un poco de humedad directamente al muro para poder trabajar mejor el acabado, ¿no?
Could you talk, yesterday you said the rounded river sand, angular sand. Can you re-explain that?
Yeah, la pregunta es que ayer se mencionaba justamente esta cuestión yo hacía una diferencia entre las arenas, digamos, trituradas o arenas fabricadas, llamémoslas así, bajo ciertas especificaciones, y la arena de río. Si ustedes se fijan, la arena de río lo que tiene es que tiene los cantos redondeados, y entonces, a diferencia de los ángulos de las orillas más anguladas, los morteros son más rígidos, son más resistentes. Entonces, normalmente cuando uno quiere un mortero más suave, usa arena de río, como es el caso de esta. What I was explaining yesterday is that the difference between, let's say, river sand, as the one we have here, is that it has rounded edges. And when we have artificial, let's say, mining sand, the edges come in a sharper way, and that'll give you harder mortars. They'll have better binding. than the rounded surface. And so if you want softer mortars, the recommendation is to use rounded edge sand. That would be river sand. Sometimes some beach sand, but basically river sand.
When you have a brand new wood float, they're very hard to work with because they're brand new. So you have to break them in. And sometimes with the brand new plana de maderas, they'll file the edges so they don't cut. But it usually takes maybe 2 or 3 days of fighting with your plana. So these are coveted. The older ones that are broken.
Sí, bueno, desde luego las planas de madera, sobre todo cuando están nuevas, pues ahora sí que hay que curtirlas un poco y al principio cuesta a veces trabajo, jalan mucho la mezcla, a veces se les rebaja un poco las orillas para que no raspen tanto, ¿no?
And you can see I've seen, and you can tell me, I've seen 2 different sizes of the planas. I've seen the ones that are about like that, and then these ones. And they're for different works.
Ajá. Y bueno, Pat comenta que él ha visto al menos 2 tamaños de planas, ¿no? Estas más pequeñas, pero hay otras un pelín más grandes y son para diferentes tipos de trabajo.
Y también los chiquitos.
Y inclusive hay unos todavía más pequeños, ¿no? Sobre todo para detalles, lugares donde son poco accesibles, ¿no?
Como arcos.
Por ejemplo, los arcos, el intrados.
You take a new wood float and rub it on the cement too.
Well, yeah.
I mean, just without any water or anything, it just break it back in March.
And you can see if those who worked this before, if you want to come up now and try it, you're going to feel the difference of the moisture on the wall. It's very different. So part of working with the lime is knowing that moisture content of when you need to leave it alone and when you can start working with it.
Y bueno, si se acercan también ahorita la diferencia en relación a cómo se empezó hace un momento, ya la cantidad de humedad que tiene el mortero es distinto y una de las cuestiones de trabajar con cal es justamente aprender, digamos, estos ciclos de humedad que puede tener y cómo son más plásticos o menos, ¿no?
And Bob brought up something really good as far as not working it too much. And I always joke around with people that they're playing, that you can tell that they played with the birthday cakes, putting the frosting on because they can't get away from it. And it's kind of like, once you get it perfect, go to the next part, because you can overwork it. Resist the temptation.
Bueno, siempre hay la tentación de sobretrabajar un poco las superficies. A veces sucede que uno quiere detallar tanto que a veces termina por dejarla peor. Entonces, a veces cuando ya la tienen bien, seguir avanzando, ¿no?
Yeah, that's right. Because when you take it off, sometimes you pull stuff, and it's a matter of moving it. And sometimes when you're working with it on the wall, it's like finishing a slab. You pick up one side a little bit so it glides, and it's a matter, as Brooks had mentioned, keeping it in motion. Because if you stop your motion and you pull it off, you're going to create a suction and pull it off if it's too dry.
Y bueno, también es si se fijan uno cuando está trabajando la plana, lo que hay que hacer es normalmente mantener la plana en movimiento, porque si se paran, lo que se hace es que se genera un efecto de succión y a veces se tira el aplanado, bueno, el acabado en este caso.
You're putting a second coat on a first coat while the first coat was still a little damp. And usually you would go through it, wouldn't you, where you had to wet the wall between the coats, is that right? Because you can't leave it, you can't put you can't put the new stuff on if the wall isn't damp, right? So here, in this case, it was damp enough and dry enough to put a second coat on, and otherwise you would want to dampen the wall, isn't that right?
Yeah, well, we did have to put the finishing coat a little bit before. The ideal would be to let it dry a little bit more, and as we said, the masons have the experience to know that they might wait a half an hour or sometimes 45 minutes, depending on how it is. But usually, if you lose the dampness, it would be good to put some water before. Okay. No? In this case, it's a bit soggy because we did it a bit too quick.
Now, so in doing regular stucco, cement stucco, it could between the scratch and brown, it could be a while.
between those coats. In the lime plaster, do you want to do it sooner for the second coat, or does it make any difference between the coats?
With my different coats, I do them. I don't do them at the same time. You want one coat to dry, and then you start the next coat, and then you want to wet the wall as you apply immediately before you apply the coats, because the wall is going to suck the moisture out right away. And the easiest thing for me is to wet a surface and then come back in and wet the surface I'm going to work with and plaster. Wet this surface, plaster, so that the wall is sufficiently wet, but not too wet, you know.
Bueno, un poco la pregunta era si como aparentemente habíamos trabajado con demasiada humedad al principio. Lo que pasa es que, bueno, ya habíamos explicado que por cuestiones del taller probablemente empezamos a aplicar seguramente empezamos a aplicar la fina mucho antes de tiempo, ¿no? Pat inclusive dice que él prefiere que seque completamente. Y hay diferentes técnicas. Hay maestros que a veces efectivamente dejan lo que nosotros llamamos que reviente la base, ¿no? Y después aplican la fina. Pero también hay la recomendación, insisto, por ejemplo, en España, sobre todo cuando aplican tricapas, quieren que la primera la pondrán gruesa y dejarán que seque y luego ponen la segunda, pero entre la segunda y la tercera quieren que no pase demasiado tiempo para que se junten, sobre todo cuando se da un bruñido. I was saying that there's different techniques with this, of course. Usually in Mexico, the masons wait for the first coat of plaster to dry off, and what we call que reviente, that it breaks, let it break, right. and then they put on the finishing coat. But also there's other techniques. For example, when you're going to finish this with a even more shinier surface, maybe like we saw in Caborca, you can let between the first and the second, you can let the first one dry out, but between the second and the third, the polished surface, you're going to want to do it, let's say, in the same day, so that it'll integrate and it'll set as one coat.
What about drying?
You want your material to dry as slow as you can, because there's a whole chemical reaction that happens. And oftentimes, thanks Jim for the question, it was a great setup. Oftentimes what happens is your material dries too fast, and when it dries too fast, it misses that chemical combination completely or partially. So you end up with a weak material. So the whole idea is to plan your work so you're not working in the heat of the summer or in the winds. You want to plan your work so you're in the shade. You want to be able to protect your work. You're going to want to be able to mist your work several days in the process afterwards to keep it cool. And sometimes people will even go to the extent of having the lonas de costal, the burlap sheets, to be able to protect it from the sun and to be able to wet that and create a microclimate.
But it still lets the air through, so it can carbonate. Right?
Yeah, as opposed to
can't cover with plastic.
Yeah, with plastic.
Y bueno, preguntaba Jim que qué pasa con el proceso de secado. Y bueno, recordar justamente que lo que vamos a querer es que estos aplanados de cal pierdan su humedad poco a poco. Si se resecan muy rápidamente, entonces van a tener justamente problemas de adherencia y cuestiones de fisuración. Entonces, lo ideal es cuidar el trabajo, hacerlo, por ejemplo, de preferencia en la sombra, o en temporadas que no sean de extremo calor, o si es el caso, protegerlo con ciertos elementos de sombra, e inclusive al grado de llegar, bueno, por supuesto el curado con un poco de agua, y hay quienes les gusta inclusive ponerle el costal, no el de plástico, sino el que se usaba antes, para que humedecerlo y generar un microclima, que además la ventaja del costal, del yute, es que permite que siga respirando.
I guess one of the last things, not the last thing, but one of the next things to talk about is when you put the lime wash on. And after your material is dried and you prepare the lime wash, as Antonio Guerrero had mentioned, what some masons will do is they'll wet the wall to have it wet, so when the lime wash goes in there, the wall doesn't suck all the moisture from the lime wash and create premature cracking. And when you put your lime wash on, as the process goes, depending upon how many coats you can, and we've put on as many as 5 coats on a wall, depending upon who the mason is. But you brush it on one way, and then after that's dried, you brush it on the other way, and then after that's dry, you brush it on the other way.
Sí, entonces bueno, bueno, un poco para terminar el proceso, si se quieren calar ya el muro, es decir, aplicarle una pintura a la cal, una vez que esté seco, seguramente estará seco el muro, es importante también aplicarle agua primero para que tampoco el muro que va a estar seco absorba todo el agua de la pintura. Y la recomendación es que, bueno, normalmente se ponen hasta 5 capas de pintura, conviene hacerlo de manera traslapada, es decir, vertical y después la siguiente horizontal y la siguiente en el otro sentido, siempre para ir tratando de tapar las diferentes manos, una en relación a la otra.
And when we look at lime plaster, look at it as a kind of as a unit, for lack of a better word. It's a sacrificial coating to the wall. It's protecting the original surface of the adobe. As the moisture comes up through natural capillary action, the water has to go someplace. It's doing exactly what it needs to do. It needs to get out. Well, it will transpire through the plaster naturally.
Y bueno, un poco insistir también en esa visión integral que hay que tener justamente con este tipo de sistemas constructivos, es decir, hay que ver un poco el aplanado como una superficie de sacrificio en términos que su función es básicamente proteger el adobe, ¿no? Y por otro lado la idea es que la humedad que puede provenir, por ejemplo, del suelo por capilaridad tenga siempre una salida, y eso lo va a permitir justamente el mortero y la pintura a la cal.
And the lime is doing its job, and that's one of the properties where it allows it to breathe. So having a good grade away from the walls, having a good roof that works, your capillary action of your water moving through the walls will be minimal. But it will eventually degrade if enough water moves through the wall, and is very, very, very easy to maintain. Your lime wash is that first sacrificial coat, and it will spall off, and then your lime plaster will go next. And it's as easy as scraping it off with your trowel and doing the preparation and lime plastering it and lime washing it, and you're back to square one.
Y bueno, por supuesto que siempre hay que pensar en el sistema constructivo completo y que esté bien mantenido, que los muros estén coronados o que tengamos los volados, esté aplanado. Pero bueno, eventualmente el material va a requerir un mantenimiento, es decir, hay un desgaste natural que se da y que bueno, básicamente lo que hay que, cuando empiece digamos, a descarapelarse la pintura o a diluirse, inclusive a disgregarse el aplanado, pues básicamente lo que hay que hacer es reponer el sistema nuevamente, ¿no?
And if anyone has any questions or comments about lime plaster and the whole process, there's a lot of information that we're squeezing into a very small period of time, so we're obviously not covering everything, and every project is very different.
Y bueno, obviamente hay poco tiempo, estamos tratando de apretar mucha información en poco tiempo. Si hay alguna pregunta, alguna duda, pues trataremos de contestarla.
We turned over up there with the alternating the alum and the soap for protected. You wouldn't use that on the walls on the outside here.
Not on a roof vault.
It's only strictly for roof.
Sí, la pregunta un poco que hace Luis es que si no se aplicaría la cuestión del jabón y alumbre sobre el muro como impermeabilización. No, normalmente el baño de cal es más que suficiente. Sobre todo el problema son los techos, que además tienen diferentes condiciones climáticas, es decir, un techo está expuesto a veces mucho más tiempo al recorrido del sol, mientras que los muros, además de que están totalmente verticales, a veces en la mañana reciben sol, a veces no, depende, un sur podría recibir más, pero la pintura es suficiente. I was saying that rooftops obviously have different conditions. They'll probably have, they can have sun all day, all year, and they'll have a different temperature and different conditions. Walls with the lime wash is enough. They're completely vertical. Sometimes they're to the shade in the morning or in the afternoon. Some orientations will give you sun all day, but the lime wash in the walls is enough. You won't have to put the waterproofing that we use for the roofs. The roofs are extreme condition, let's put it that way.
Because water sits on them and doesn't sheet down the wall as much.
I wanted to talk a little bit about maintenance. I mean, I really appreciated your comment earlier about the fact that we often build a building or finish a building, even the repair of a building, and we think it's done. And your comment about the fact that that's when maintenance starts, and that we, particularly in the West, have this attitude about that we don't want to maintain. We think a building should be done when it's complete, and we don't have an ethic of maintenance. And I'm wondering how, I mean, it's a real change of attitude then on the part of people who have to live in a building like this that requires a lot of maintenance. How do you go about convincing people that maintenance needs to be a part of their lives, and how do you then communicate that to the clients or to the people who take care of the building?
Bueno, Brooks quiere un poco enfatizar la cuestión del mantenimiento en este tipo de construcciones. Casi siempre se piensa, sobre todo, bueno, la cultura occidental, que esta poca preocupación hacia el mantenimiento, uno termina el edificio y ya está, ¿no? Y sin embargo hay ahí casi una ética del mantenimiento que habría que tener. ¿Y cuál es un poco el procedimiento que usa Pat para convencer a los clientes, a los usuarios en relación a las cuestiones de mantenimiento que requieren este tipo de edificios?
One thing to keep in mind is you know, the building's a living thing, and Antonio Guerrero's reference to taking care of the patient is the health of the building. And you don't wait until you have some disaster. Sometimes we do, but sometimes you don't wait until you have some disaster where you have to go in and you have to have this real drastic stuff done. You just go through and you maintain things. I personally think that with our attitudes towards earth and architecture and earth and buildings, it's part of the earth, understanding what the moisture does, how it can help us, how it can hurt us as far as the buildings, and how to maintain it is really important. And I think one of the ways to be able to convey that is through the analogy of the building being alive and being the patient, and needing to be able to take care of those medical needs or those health issues as they come up, and not put things off. And we've, you know, throughout this week, I think we've shown how easy it is to maintain these buildings. And in our modern society, we just need to be able to draw the line and stop and say, you know, we can, if we do this maintenance on these buildings, it can live a very, very long time.
Y bueno, un poco regresar a esta analogía que ya había mencionado Toño Guerrero, que finalmente la arquitectura de tierra es un elemento vivo, ¿no? Y también recuperar esta idea de que efectivamente tenemos a una persona, a veces un paciente que tiene ciertos efectos, tiene ciertas enfermedades, pero a veces parece que esperamos casi a que esté muerto antes de intervenir. Lo importante sería ir teniendo un cuidado, y yo diría, y eso lo voy a agregar un poco, esta cuestión de prevención, inclusive de nuestra salud, ¿no? Es decir, si uno come bien, si uno toma sus vitaminas y esto, a lo mejor no necesita cirugía, ¿no? Así es que él cree que esta cuestión de la analogía que había hecho Toño sería valiosa. A mí me gustaría agregar de una vez una cosa que yo creo que es importante en esto que platicábamos ayer en relación a la sustentabilidad ambiental, es que, y una crítica que yo he hecho al movimiento sustentable, es que siempre hay esta cuestión de que la arquitectura sustentable es aquella que digamos, se adapta mejor al medio ambiente, que reacciona con el medio ambiente, pero yo no creo que sea así. ¿Y a qué me refiero? Que en realidad la buena arquitectura sustentable es aquella que permite relacionar al hombre con su entorno, porque se han creado estos edificios de alta tecnología que se cierra automáticamente la persiana, los cristales se tintean y entonces uno está metido en una cápsula y el edificio está reaccionando. Y en realidad tenemos que aprender, para ser más sustentables, a que a veces en invierno hay que salir al sol o hay que cerrar la ventana cuando hace frío, y me parece que eso es mucho más sustentable que edificios que reaccionan por sí solos, ¿no? Entonces, me parece que en ese sentido la arquitectura tradicional también implicaba a veces tener el pórtico o tener a veces cuestiones que se usaban en ciertas temporadas en invierno, y si nosotros usamos la arquitectura de manera cíclica, nos vamos a acercar más a la naturaleza, y esa es la verdadera arquitectura sustentable para mí. I was saying that critique that I've done to sustainable architecture movement is that all these high-tech applications, what they do is that the building is the one that reacts to the environment, not the people that uses them. And what happens is that we're kind of in a spaceship or in a bubble. We can have the same temperature all year round, and the real sustainable architecture is that relates man with his environment. So sometimes and traditional architecture did that. You would use maybe one room in winter, another room in the summertime. You would use the patio. You go out and have the sun. If we let the sustainable architecture movement say high tech can be the solution, I think we're going to step up away from nature, and we need to be closer to nature, and that means that the good sustainable architecture is that the architecture that relates man with his environment.
I think that's great, Javier, and I'm really glad you said that, because I remember doing a study, and this is what I teach my students about. Le Corbusier said that we should be building for an active house and a passive man. You know, in other words, that we should be in a relaxed, and we should be of a generation of leisure.
And the house is a machine.
And the house is a machine for living, and we should be doing just the opposite, where it's really active man, passive house. And in other words, the human should be the one that interacts with the house and changes seasons and changes rooms based on the seasons, or has to engage with the house in a way that's much more active than they have with high-tech or many of the modern architecture movement. But it's the damn modernists that have sort of corrupted us.
Bueno, comentaba que un poco esta idea justamente que él ha tratado de inculcar a sus alumnos. Por ejemplo, que Le Corbusier decía que el hombre moderno, digamos, tenía que dedicarse más justamente, digamos, al reposo, y era el edificio que él tenía que ser más activo y el hombre más pasivo. Y parece ser que justamente de lo que se trata es exactamente lo contrario, que el hombre debe ser más activo y su arquitectura más pasiva, en el sentido de que uno tiene que digamos, relacionarse con el entorno, y no sea el edificio el que sea la interfase, ¿no? Totalmente de acuerdo. Y bueno, que han sido un poco los modernistas. Bueno, también hay cosas extraordinarias de los modernistas, pero esta idea que decía Bob, que la máquina para vivir, y efectivamente yo considero que es bien importante que la arquitectura sustentable nos permite relacionarnos mejor con nuestra naturaleza, con el entorno natural, pues, ¿no?
Well, we seem to have a society, their economy has itself consumed rather than maintain. So the capitalism needs the consumption, buy, and we want to just maintain.
Sí, y bueno, comenta también que un poco también la ideología más del capitalismo, donde hay esta preocupación por mantener un consumo permanente más que mantener las cosas, ¿no? Y eso también es cierto, tiene que ver con cómo se construye, cómo se producen los objetos, ¿no? Y bueno.
Anyone who's watched the movie Robots, that's exactly what it's about. I've got kids who watch Robots. It's a great movie, actually.
Eso es lo que pasa efectivamente con esta película de robots. No sé
¿Cómo se llama en español?
¿Cómo fue? ¿Quién la hizo?
Disney, es un Pixar.
Ok. Una película animada, sí, bueno, no la recuerdo.
Es una buena película
para los chicos, sí.
Porque todos los robots están rotos, ¿no? En lugar de repararlas, se tiran. Entonces compran otros robots para hacer una economía de pues, de nuevas cosas, ¿no? De cosas nuevas.
Es también similar, hay otra cuestión de dibujos animados que salió el año pasado de un pequeño robot que acumulaba basura y había la gente en el espacio que no hacía nada porque la nave hacía absolutamente todo, entretenimiento, temperatura, no recuerdo cómo se llamaba. I was making Wall-E, right. There was a similar movie where people were in a spaceship and the spaceship did everything, entertainment, reading, and people became
blobs. No, I have one more technical issue or question. In the straw bale, we're putting the lime plaster on, and I've only had experience with a half, 1-in-1 between lime and cement. And it seemed the way we were doing it was we put it on the building, the first coat, and because well, I think it's like Adobe, it really have to be pushed in and fill all the voids on the first coat. And then when we would keep it moist and watch it and use our trowels to work out any cracks. And when we started seeing no cracks and it was gradually drying over, a week or two or something, then we would come back for the second coat. And then we might do the same thing, watch for the cracks. And I like the lime because it seemed to be malleable. As long as it's kept damp enough, we could keep doing that. At a certain point, you can't do it without too much water, and then you would put the next coat on. Is that kind of in tune with what you're doing?
Un poco la pregunta que hace es que él ha trabajado con estos muros de pacas de paja, ¿no? Y que bueno, un poco, aunque ellos han estado usando una relación de 1 a 1 con cemento y cal, lo que hacen es un poco aplicar similar, es decir, que hay que empujar un poco el mortero para que se meta todos los vacíos, pero bueno, un poco esperan a que se seque bien y que aparezcan un poco las fisuras de este proceso que yo hablaba un poco del reventado para atacarlas primero antes de llegar con el acabado final.
Well, with my very small experiences with straw bale, because I was asked to participate in a couple of those, what I found worked the best from my perspective was applying it with a llana, with a trowel, because it kept bouncing back. You throw it on, it just come back at you. You're just kind of throwing it on the wall and ducking because when it came back. So we had to push it, use the trowel and the hawk to put it on. And what I found was it was easier to create a mud plaster base coat first, leave it rough, and then put a lime coat over that.
Y bueno, el comentario que hace Pat, que en su experiencia, por lo menos que lo invitaron a participar en estos muros de paja, es que parecía que al tratar de aventar el aplanado en el muro de las pacas, más bien parecía que rebotaba, hasta se tenía que agachar para que no le pegara. Entonces parecía que era un poco más fácil irlo aplicando con la llana o con la plana de manera directa. En todo caso, piensa que a lo mejor si se aplica primero una capa de tierra, ¿verdad? Digamos, de mortero de tierra, y dejar, digamos, que reseque, y después que se va a ir mejor con la paja, y después sobre ese ponerlo el de cal, ¿no?
And the other thing I found was there's a breathability issues with straw, and the mud and the lime provided those breathabilities. Some people have argued, as I've listened, that they want to be able to seal the outside and let the inside breathe. But as far as I'm concerned, with whatever type of medium of material that you're using, as long as you prepare it from start to finish, where you go from the mud to the lime wash, you have a material that is going to work and service real well, whether it's on a straw bale or whether it's on an adobe.
But do you work it where you keep working the cracks out of it, since it's malleable? I mean, our buildings we would completely surround in tarps, 3 feet away from the building, so we could walk around our buildings. And that's where we would continue, the second day, you got all the cracks show up finally, and maybe we have more cracking on straw bale the first times around that.
Well, and I think, and to jump ahead of translating, I think that the nature of straw bale, to build it out in mud plasters, you create a substrate that's adhered to the straw bale that you can lime plaster. Right. So you're dealing with issues controlling the cracking as you're working with the mud plaster and the lime plaster. And as they're wet, you can push things in. The same with the mud and the lime. And then when they dry, you have to leave it alone. Right. I would be concerned about your enveloping the structure with plastic.
Actually, not so much plastic, but and it wouldn't be touching the structure. It would be just keeping the moisture. During the work. Just during the work.
Bueno, lo primero que comentaba Pat es que parece que hay ciertas similitudes en esos sistemas constructivos en términos de que justamente la idea es que el elemento, en este caso la paja, no se humedezca, y hay quienes dicen, bueno, vamos a sellar el exterior y que respire por dentro, ¿no? Pero en todo caso, en su opinión, le parece que el sistema de la respirabilidad tendría que ir un poco en ambos sentidos. Y de todos modos hay la insistencia por parte de Alan de que, bueno, siguen presentándose a veces las fisuras, que en todo caso pareciera que la ventaja de la cal, por estas propiedades que ya hemos comentado, que el fraguado es mucho más lento, que podría en un momento dado permitir el trabajo de esas fisuras, ¿no? Y bueno, efectivamente, por un lado, de todos modos recalca la necesidad a lo mejor de hacer una especie de material de transición que puede ser la tierra entre la paja y el mortero de cal para que mejore esa adherencia, ¿no? Y que mantenga sobre todo esta cuestión de la respirabilidad. Le preocupaba un poco también el que utilizaran plástico en estos sistemas. Parece ser que es el sistema para protegerlo, sin embargo, aclaraba Alan que no, que el plástico básicamente es durante el proceso de trabajo, ¿no?
And one particular point, Alan, when you're talking about malleable, we have a good example here. We have the lime plaster is already starting to crack, and it's doing it's exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So you control the environmental situations to be able to slow this down. But lime, with that property, you can just work that out. And protect your work. So lime has that property of being able to work while it's wet.
Bueno, y entonces, como vimos, obviamente el mortero de cal, y la cal está haciendo lo que se espera, es decir, empieza a perder humedad y empieza este proceso justamente de secado, se forman las grietas, pero la ventaja que tiene por este proceso más lento es que uno lo puede volver a trabajar y sellar estas fisuras, y de todos modos va a fraguar dentro del aplanado, ¿no? Probablemente con el cemento, seguramente eso a veces en 2 horas ya está totalmente fraguado, ¿no?
Sí, Pat, en Nuevo México, ¿ustedes van utilizando lavabo de nopal o no?
Pues usamos lavabo con nopal con los aplanados de cal y también algunas veces con los aplanados de lodo, tierra. Depende de quién es el albañil y dónde eran.
Are they using the nopal glue in New Mexico? And he says it depends on the mason. They'll use it both for lime and for earth clash.
And one thing I just wanted to mention, I remember at our first TICAL, and Antonio Guerrero was there, we had Pergentino Luna from Guanajuato, I believe, and we had Rivera, ¿qué es el primer nombre de Antonio Rivera from Chihuahua? And they spent the first half hour arguing over whose tradition was better. So it's a matter of location and the tradition that they use.
Comentaba que en algún reunión, taller anterior, que Toño discutía con Toño Rivera cuál tradición era mejor, ¿no? Y que, bueno, la chihuahuense, ¿verdad?
Era lo que les decía, en diferentes partes de México está el sistema constructivo. La semana pasada estaba en Chiapas y ahí es más el bajareque con horcones, es decir, no es la ramita, no, son troncos entretejidos con ramas y metidos adobes y piedras y lo que sea, y después ya encarrados. Y tienen los mismos problemas de mantenimiento, porque la humedad, los horcones se pudren, entonces aunque sea de tierra, tienen los mismos, entre comillas, tienen los mismos sistemas. ¿Por qué? Porque tienen que pasar la viga de arrastre y sobre eso presión hacia abajo todos los horcones. Y sobre eso tenemos la teja, que una teja de las viejas anda pesando 9 kilos cada una. Entonces, los traslapes son tan cortitos, entonces en 1 metro tenemos no sé qué cantidad, pero pasan casi los 300 kilos por metro cuadrado. Entonces, en similitud hay cosas que funcionan igual, nada más que el sistema constructivo es diferente. ¿Sí? El poner la baba de nopal en estos aplanados, el mucílago que sale permite y hace que no se pierda la humedad tan rápido en nuestros climas. Es como un curacreto, lo decíamos en otra ocasión. Ponemos más la baba de nopal por los climas que tenemos aquí. Y aparte te lo hace más manejable todos los aplanados. No es lo mismo manejarlo nada más así y le pones baba de nopal y dices, pero que a todo dar corre la plana, la cuchara, te lo avienta muy suave. Bueno, es facilidad de los trabajadores que ellos van viendo qué mejor funcionan. Los albañiles son los que nos van a decir, los viejitos son los que nos dicen, ponle esto porque así lo hacía mi papá o así lo hacía mi abuelo. Esos son los que estamos rescatando. No, para unos puede ser mejor con baba de nopal, con otros no, pero los climas también nos van a decir, esto funciona mejor aquí que allá. ¿Sí?
Try translating that in reverse order.
Es que yo me aviento.
No, very. That really the systems that you use depend upon many things: your climate and your system of construction. And for instance, here in the north, where we have the dryness and the heat, the use of the nopal mucilage, the baba de nopal, prevents the mortar from drying out too quickly. And it also makes the mortar more manageable. And so the masons will use it because, when they use it, look how far out it is when you put on the plaster. It's so easy to work with the trowel. And maybe it's something that their father told them to do, or their grandfather. And those are the kinds of traditional knowledge bits that we're trying to rescue. And Antonio was in Chiapas last week, where the earth building is involved more with this system of using posts and tree trunks that are woven together and then filled with earth. And it's a totally different system, although it is earth, same material, but a different system of construction. And the roofs there are made of tiles, heavy clay tiles, where a single tile weighs 9 kilos for one tile. And if you look at a square meter, it might weigh 300 kilos per square meter. Massively heavy roofs being supported on these lateral beams on the posts. And so the types of problems that they have in Chiapas obviously are completely different than you might find up here in the northern desert, because there you have the trunks begin to rot from the humidity, and then you have compression of the structure. So you can't just say, well, wherever you are. So baba de nopal isn't going to help that problem. So you have to really look at your climate, your traditions, and your building system to know what traditional technique is relevant to what you're doing.
Just a comment there that would be a good indication. I mean, and it's along this theme that we've been talking about, that it's man and the environment. So whatever environment you're in, whether it's the desert or if it's in a real humid place, the northwest of the United States, you're going to have a lot, just different things you have to look at, so you're working with them.
Y sí, bueno, recalcar esta cuestión que efectivamente hay diferentes entornos, diferentes contextos naturales, y puede ser un clima desértico, una cuestión tropical, y que lo que hay que ver es justamente el contexto donde se está trabajando, ¿no?